Background radiation, starting point. Every human on Earth lives with a constant flow of radiation called background radiation. On average, this adds up to about 2 to 3 millisieverts (MSV) per year. It comes from multiple sources: cosmic rays from outer space, radioactive minerals in soil, radon gas seeping into homes, and even the food we eat. Bananas, for example, contain potassium-40, a naturally radioactive isotope. The dose is so tiny, it's used as a lighthearted comparison in science, often called the banana equivalent dose. This background exposure is considered harmless because the human body is adapted to repair the very minor DNA damage it causes. It's important to note that different parts of the world have slightly different background levels. People living in Denver, Colorado, receive almost double the yearly radiation compared to those living at sea level, simply because of the higher altitude and thinner atmosphere. In certain areas like Ramsar, Iran, natural background radiation can reach 10 times the global average with no observed negative effects on the local population. Medical X-rays, small but noticeable doses. A chest X-ray delivers about 0.1 ns, which is the same as a few days of natural background radiation. A dental X-ray is even smaller, around 0.005 nsv. While that may sound alarming, the health risk is extremely small. To put it in perspective, you'd need 200 chest X-rays in a year to approach the occupational limits set for nuclear workers. X-rays are considered safe when used occasionally, but repeated exposure over a lifetime can slightly increase cancer risks. That's why doctors balance the medical benefits of clear imaging with the long-term health risks. CT scans, a bigger jump. Computerized tomography, CT, scans are among the sources of radiation that average individuals are exposed to throughout the course of their lives that are among the highest doses. An abdominal CT scan can produce up to 10 ns, with a head CT scan delivers approximately 2 nsv. This is equivalent to the amount of background radiation that one would be exposed over several years' worth of hospital visits squeezed into a single visit. Despite the fact that this may appear to be a drastic measure, the advantage frequently outweighs the danger. Those diagnoses that can save lives greatly exceed the minuscule increased probability of developing cancer decades in the future, and a CT scan can detect internal bleeding, tumors, and organ damage. Nonetheless, doctors keep a close eye on the usage of CT scans, particularly for youngsters, who are more susceptible to the negative effects of radiation. Air travel, cosmic radiation above the clouds. Flying at high altitudes exposes you to more cosmic rays, since the atmosphere's protective blanket is thinner the higher you go. A cross-country flight can give you around 0.03 to 0.05 ms, while a long-haul intercontinental flight might expose you to 0.1 nsv. That means frequent flyers, pilots, and flight attendants accumulate higher yearly doses, often in the 3 to 5 ns per year range. For comparison, astronauts receive much more, but even for airline workers, this level is considered safe with only a minor increase in long-term risks. Nuclear worker limits, managed exposure. People who work in nuclear power plants or around radioactive materials are strictly regulated. In most countries, the occupational dose limit is 20 ms per year, though short-term exposures up to 50 ms may be allowed under special conditions. At these levels, there's no immediate health effect. The concern is long-term cancer risk, which rises slightly but remains low with careful monitoring. Workers wear radiation badges that track their exposure, and strict rules limit how close they can get to radioactive sources. 100 ms measurable health effects. At around 100 ms received all at once, scientists begin to see statistically significant increases in cancer risk. It's often cited as the threshold where radiation stops being just background noise and becomes something with long-term health implications. This dose won't cause sickness right away, but it damages enough cells that effects show up decades later. This level is sometimes reached by people in the immediate area of nuclear accidents, but outside the hottest zones. 250 to 500 nsv, The edge of radiation sickness. When doses reach 250 to 500 mes, short-term effects become possible. Victims may experience temporary nausea, fatigue, and a decrease in white blood cells. This was the range faced by many Chernobyl workers who were not at the reactor core but were still nearby during the first hours of the disaster. Most people survive this level, but cancer risk increases noticeably. It's the point where radiation goes from invisible danger to a medical problem requiring attention. 1 sievert, 1000 MSV, clear radiation sickness. A whole body dose of 1 SV almost always causes radiation sickness. Symptoms appear within hours: nausea, vomiting, and dizziness. The immune system weakens because bone marrow cells are destroyed. While rarely fatal by itself, this dose weakens the body enough to make infections or long-term health effects far more dangerous. Survivors often face an increased lifetime cancer risk of several percent. 2 to 3 sieverts, severe illness. At 2 to 3 SV, symptoms become much more severe. Victims lose hair, suffer internal bleeding, and face constant infections due to collapsed immunity. The digestive system is also heavily damaged. With modern medical care, survival is possible, but it's a long, painful recovery. Without treatment, many people exposed to this range will die within weeks. 4 to 5 sieverts, LD50, 50% fatal. This is known as the LD50 range, the dose at which 50% of people die without treatment. Around 4 to 5 SV, bone marrow and internal organs fail catastrophically. Without specialized medical care, half of those exposed won't survive. Chernobyl's first responders and many Hiroshima survivors were exposed to doses in this range. Those who lived often endured lifelong health consequences, including cancers and chronic illnesses. 6 to 10 sieverts, extremely lethal. Between 6 and 10 SV, survival is rare even with the best treatment. The gastrointestinal system breaks down, leading to internal bleeding, infection, and eventual organ failure. This range was lethal to many workers who entered Chernobyl's reactor building in 1986. Despite desperate medical care, many died within weeks. 20 to 30 sieverts, nervous system failure. At 20 to 30 SV, the central nervous system is destroyed almost immediately. Victims lose coordination, fall unconscious, and die within hours to days. At this level, treatment is impossible because the radiation essentially burns the body at a cellular level. These levels are rarely seen outside nuclear weapons or standing right next to powerful radiation sources. 50+ sieverts, instantly fatal. Anything beyond 50 SV is instantly fatal. The nervous system shuts down almost immediately. The cardiovascular system collapses, and death occurs within hours. This level was measured near the Elephant's Foot at Chernobyl the months after the disaster. Standing next to it for a couple of minutes in 1986 meant certain death. Even today, decades later, it remains dangerously radioactive, though exposure times have increased from minutes to hours. Radiation in space, the final frontier. Radiation is a constant danger to humans since it exists at all times beyond the protective atmosphere of the Earth. On the International Space Station, astronauts are exposed to 50 to 100 millisieverts per year, which is 20 to 30 times the amount received on Earth. A lengthy voyage to Mars might result in humans being exposed to 600 to 1,000 MSV, which would significantly increase their chances of developing cancer. This is the reason why spacecraft are constructed with shielding against radiation, and why missions that venture out into deep space continue to represent some of the greatest scientific and engineering challenges facing civilization. Putting it all together, radiation exposure is all about the dose and the time. At the lowest levels, like bananas, X-rays, or flights, it's harmless. At mid-levels, like 100 to 500 MSV, it increases long-term cancer risk. Beyond 1 SV, see clear sickness, and beyond 4 to 5 SV, survival becomes a coin toss. Anything above 10 SV is almost certainly fatal. The key lesson is that radiation isn't always dangerous. In fact, it powers medicine, industry, and space exploration. But at the highest levels, it becomes one of the most destructive forces humans can encounter.